Welcome to Reddit Confessions.
There wasn't a single moment I could point to, no lightning bolt from the sky, no screaming fight, no sudden betrayal that screamed, "Here it is." It was quieter than that, like a draft under a door you didn't notice until the whole room was cold. My wife, Madison, had started smiling less, touching me less. Her phone, once forgotten on counters and coffee tables, now never left her hand. And maybe it wouldn't have even registered as something deeper if it wasn't for the way she started looking at me, like I was someone who'd just walked into the room instead of the man she'd spent nearly a decade with. I thought maybe she was just stressed. Her best friend, Vanessa, was getting married soon, and Madison was the maid of honor. Every other day it seemed like they were on the phone or out running wedding errands. Vanessa's fiancé, Tyler, was around a lot too, helping coordinate venues and florals and whatever else weddings involve. He and I were cool, not close, but friendly. Beer on the deck, kind of friendly. But I started noticing little moments. Like the way Madison laughed a little too hard at Tyler's jokes. The way her eyes stayed on him a beat too long when he walked into a room. Or the time I walked into the kitchen and they were standing just a little too close. Tyler's hand brushing hers as they both reached for the same champagne flute. They laughed it off. So did I. I told myself I was imagining things. That it was the pressure of helping with a wedding while holding down full-time jobs and a mortgage. But something didn't feel right. It really started gnawing at me one night when Madison came home late from one of those planning sessions. She was tipsy, maybe more than tipsy, her lipstick smudged, her eyes glassy. I asked how it went. She smiled like she was in a daze and said, "We ended up at Tyler's place." Vanessa was tired and left early. That night, she didn't kiss me goodnight. She just climbed into bed and turned her back to me. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The days that followed were a haze of paranoia wrapped in routine. I went to work, made coffee, folded laundry, made small talk with Madison about the grocery list, the weather, the dog's itchy ear, but underneath it all, there was this low hum in my gut that wouldn't quit. Something was wrong. Not just marital drift wrong. Not just we've grown apart wrong. Something worse. Something that felt like betrayal. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops, who accuses, who lets suspicion rot him from the inside. But I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Madison's flushed cheeks, the faraway look in her eyes when she mentioned Tyler. And the weirdest part? Vanessa had texted me a few days later asking if I knew why Madison hadn't replied to her messages. "She kinda ghosted me after our coffee date last week," she wrote. That threw me. According to Madison, they'd been practically living in each other's pockets getting ready for the wedding. Why would she lie about that? I started checking the calendar more closely. Not just our shared Google Calendar, but receipts in the trash. Charges on our shared credit card. There were things that didn't add up. A charge at a wine bar across town on a night she told me she was working late. An Uber receipt from an address that wasn't Vanessa's or Tyler's or anywhere else I recognized. Little things. Easy to miss. But once I started looking, I couldn't stop. One evening while she was in the shower, I finally caved and looked at her phone. I knew the password. I'd always known it. Madison wasn't secretive until recently, and that only added to my guilt as my thumb hovered over the Messages app. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. There were no recent messages from Vanessa, but there were dozens, hidden in the archived section, from Tyler. And they weren't just about wedding planning. The first message I opened was a selfie. Tyler, shirtless, lying in bed. Below it, Madison had replied, "You're such a tease. I'm still sore from last time." I sat down on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. I read more. There were jokes, photos, intimate details, talk of meeting at hotels, secret nights when Vanessa was working late and I was none the wiser. It had been going on for months. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or throw up. Instead, I just sat there, listening to the sound of water running in the bathroom, thinking about everything that had been a lie. And the wedding, Vanessa and Tyler's wedding, still weeks away. This wasn't just cheating. This was nuclear. And the worst part? Vanessa didn't know a damn thing. "You lied to me," I said. "You lied to Vanessa. You helped her pick out a dress while you were fucking her fiancé." Madison flinched like I'd struck her. "It wasn't like that," she murmured. "She didn't leave that night. She slept in the guest room, though I doubt she slept at all. Neither did I." I lay awake staring at the ceiling, mind racing through every moment of the last few months. Her late nights. Her sudden interest in solo time. All those times I convinced myself I was being paranoid. All the gaslighting I didn't recognize until now. And the wedding. God, the wedding. Vanessa had texted me just 3 days earlier with a picture of her dress fittings, asking if Madison looked happier than she'd ever seen her. I hadn't replied yet. I couldn't stop thinking about that smile on Vanessa's face. The hope in it. The trust. The image burned behind my eyes. By morning, Madison had packed a suitcase. She didn't speak to me, just paused in the doorway, eyes red and hollow. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. I didn't respond. I didn't know her piece. Not today. Once she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time with my phone in my hand. I knew I had to tell Vanessa. But how the hell do you even start that conversation? "Hey, your best friend and your fiancé have been sleeping together for months. Want to grab a coffee and talk about it?" I must have started and deleted a dozen texts. Eventually, I just called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same thing. It wasn't until late afternoon that she finally called me back. "Hey," she chirped, voice bright. "Sorry I missed your calls. What's up?" I almost choked. I cleared my throat, forced the words out. "Vanessa, I really need to talk to you. In person." "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "It's not." There was a pause. "Is it Madison?" I hesitated, then, "Can we meet?" "Yeah, sure. What's going on?" "I'll explain when I see you." We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop downtown, one where we used to all hang out together, the four of us. I hated the symbolism of it, but it was neutral ground. I needed that. When I got there, she was already seated at a corner table, sipping something iced and green. She smiled when she saw me, then blinked at my expression. "What's going on?" she asked, voice dropping a note. I sat across from her, looked her straight in the eyes. "I'm so sorry," I said, "but you need to know what's happening before you marry him." She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, a frown slowly forming on her face, like her brain hadn't caught up with her ears. "What do you mean?" she asked, still trying to place the words into a reality she recognized. I looked down for a second, then met her eyes. "Madison and Tyler, they've been having an affair." Silence. And then, like I'd kicked her in the chest, she let out a sharp laugh, short, involuntary. "That's not funny," she said, but the smile was already gone from her face. "I'm not joking," I said quietly. Her lips parted slightly, confusion starting to bleed into something darker. How do you know?" I pulled my phone from my pocket and slid it across the table. Screenshots, messages, dates, times. I had compiled it all into a folder. I had wanted to be sure. Not just for me anymore, but for her. She picked it up and scrolled. Her hands started to shake. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. She swallowed hard and tried again. This is recent." "Yeah, it's been going on for months." Her eyes darted across the screen, then stopped. She stared for a long time, blinked slowly, and I could see the moment it landed. The betrayal. The realization that the person she trusted most, Madison, had gutted her behind her back. That her future husband had taken everything sacred about their relationship and dragged it through the dirt. "I was with her when she picked my veil," she whispered. "She told me she cried when she saw me in the dress." I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She looked up at me, face pale. "And you're sure?" I walked in on the messages myself. "It's real. I'm sorry." She covered her mouth and leaned back in her chair like she needed the space to breathe. Oh my God. People at nearby tables were starting to notice. The shaking hands. The sudden drop in energy. The tears she was now trying to hold back. Vanessa was proud, always had been. Composed. The kind of person who never lost it in public. But this wasn't something you could hold together. "I need to go," she said, standing abruptly. "I can drive." "No," she said. "I need to. I just need to think." She didn't even say goodbye. She just walked out, my phone still clutched in her hand. She didn't call me that night. I thought maybe she would. Maybe to scream, maybe to cry, maybe just to ask me if I was absolutely sure. But the hours dragged on and the silence held. I didn't hear from Madison either. Not that I expected to. We were on radio silence. Her suitcase was gone, and so were the keys I'd left on the kitchen table for her. The house felt hollow without the sound of her footsteps or the low hum of her voice behind a closed door. I couldn't sleep. I paced the living room like I was waiting for something to arrive. A phone call, a knock, an explosion. Nothing came. In the morning, I checked my phone and saw a missed call from Vanessa. 2 in the morning. No voicemail. I called her back around 10. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was flat, but steady. Hey, hey, are you okay? I didn't sleep much, she said. Yeah, me neither. There was a long pause. I confronted him, she finally said. My heart seized. What happened? She let out a breath. He denied it at first. Said you must have photoshopped it. Said you were trying to ruin our wedding out of jealousy. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course he did. Then I showed him the screenshots from Madison's phone. The way he froze. I knew it was true. He didn't even try to explain it after that. Just said it was a mistake and that he was drunk the first time and it just kept happening. Silence again. I asked him to leave, she continued. He's gone. Wedding's off. I closed my eyes. Relief wasn't the right word. Nothing about this felt like relief. But there was something in her voice, clarity, maybe, that felt steadier than the day before. I'm so sorry, I said. You were right to tell me, she replied, softly. You could have stayed quiet. Let it happen. But you didn't. I couldn't. You didn't deserve that. She was quiet again. Then, thank you. The wedding was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks from flowers, vows, champagne toasts, and cake. Now it was just a date circled in red on a calendar no one wanted to look at. Vanessa had told her family, called the venue, canceled everything. The caterer, the DJ, the photographer. Her voice when she told me all that. It was like she was talking about someone else's life. I hadn't heard from Madison since she walked out. Until now. She texted me at 2:14 p.m. Can we talk? My stomach turned. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. I didn't want to see her. I didn't even want to hear her voice. But part of me knew I needed to. Not for closure. Not for reconciliation. But for the same reason you walk through a burned-down house after the fire, to understand the damage. I wrote back, tomorrow, 11 a.m. House. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, cleaning up like she was a guest I didn't want but had to prepare for anyway. I kept finding pieces of her, hair ties, old receipts, her favorite coffee mug. I threw most of them in a box. I couldn't look at that stuff anymore. The next morning, she showed up right on time. She looked tired, pale. There were bags under her eyes, and her hair was tied up in a messy bun like she hadn't bothered to do much with herself. She wore the same hoodie she used to throw on when we'd watch movies on lazy Sundays. It was disorienting. Hi, she said. I didn't say it back. She stepped inside. We sat in the living room, the same place we'd had 1,000 small, quiet moments together. Now it felt like a war zone. She started talking before I could. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I nodded once. You said that. She bit her lip. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't want to hurt you. Or Vanessa. But you did. I know. Then why? Her eyes welled up. I don't even know anymore. At first, it felt like a tension I hadn't had in a long time. Tyler made me feel seen. Then it just spiraled. I didn't know how to stop. I let out a short breath. You stopped by not doing it. She flinched. I know I fucked everything up. I looked at her for a long time. Vanessa called off the wedding. Tyler's out. She nodded slowly, like that news had already reached her and she'd spent the night crying over it. I wanted to tell her, Madison said. I really did. But you didn't. I did. She didn't respond. Just looked at the floor, tears sliding silently down her cheek. I'm filing for divorce, I said. The papers will be ready by the end of the week. She nodded again, jaw clenched. I guess I deserve that, she whispered. I'm not doing it to punish you, I said. I'm doing it because I don't know who you are anymore. She started to cry harder then, but I didn't reach out to comfort her. That wasn't my job anymore. She cried quietly for a while. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask if she was okay. It wasn't cruelty. It was just that I'd spent months watching her become someone who could do what she did and lie to my face while doing it. My well of compassion for her had run dry. Eventually, she wiped her face with her sleeve and looked at me. Do you think I'm a monster? I shook my head. No, I think you're selfish and weak, and I think you knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't think you'd get caught. She flinched like I'd hit her, but she didn't deny it. There was nothing else to say after that. She stood slowly, looked around the house like she was trying to memorize the walls, the couch, the air. Her voice broke as she said, I loved you. I still do. I stared at her, unmoved. Then why wasn't that enough? She didn't have an answer. She left without another word. I closed the door behind her and stood there for a while, forehead resting against the wood, letting the silence settle around me like a fog. This was it. The end of something I had spent years building. Not with a bang, but a slow, cruel unraveling that left nothing but ash and regret in its place. That evening, Vanessa texted me again. He tried to come by. "What did you say?" I asked. Told him to go to hell. I didn't respond right away. Just stared at her message for a long time. Then I typed, "You okay?" "Not even close," she replied. "But I'm not marrying a liar." I admired that. Her strength. Her ability to act without hesitation once the truth came out. She didn't beg. She didn't rationalize. She just burned the whole thing down. Maybe that was what I needed to do too. The days that followed were quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful, more like the aftermath of an earthquake. Everything was technically still standing, but nothing felt safe anymore. The house was too clean, too still. I found myself staring at rooms that once had meaning and wondering if any of that had ever been real. Madison didn't contact me again. I got an email from her lawyer 2 days later confirming that she'd agreed to an uncontested divorce. That was almost a relief. No dragging it out. No pretending there was something to salvage. She knew there wasn't. Vanessa and I started texting every few days. Nothing heavy, just check-ins. She told me she'd moved back in with her parents for a bit, just to get her bearings. Her mom was supportive. Her dad wanted to beat the hell out of Tyler. I told her to let him. And yet, I could feel this strange undercurrent between us. Like we were both standing at the edge of a cliff looking at the same broken landscape, unsure of what to do next. She never asked me for more details, and I didn't push. We both knew too much already. One night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself going through old photos on my phone. Madison and I on our first trip to Colorado. Her laughing with whipped cream on her nose. A blurry picture of her and Vanessa dancing barefoot in our living room after too much wine. I stared at that one for a long time. They had been inseparable once. And now? Gone. Betrayal does something to your memory. It stains even the good parts. I didn't know how to look at that picture anymore. Was it ever real? Or was it just something convenient to fake while you slowly tore someone apart behind their back? I thought about deleting everything. I didn't. Not yet. I put the phone down and went outside. Just walked. No destination. No music. Just the sound of my feet on pavement and the occasional rustle of wind through trees. Eventually, I sat down on a park bench under a dim streetlight and let the night settle over me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there with the hollow truth of it all. The people closest to me, the two people I trusted most, had chosen each other over the rest of us. And somehow, I was the one left picking up the pieces. A week passed. The divorce paperwork was underway, the house was getting quieter, and I was slowly trying to rebuild the scaffolding of a daily routine. But something gnawed at me, something unfinished. Tyler. I hadn't spoken to him. Not once. I hadn't yelled. Hadn't thrown a punch. Hadn't even sent a message. And maybe that was what bothered me the most. So when I saw his name pop up on my phone one afternoon, an incoming call, I stared at it for a long second, thumb frozen over the red decline button. Then I answered. There was a beat of silence before he spoke. "Hey, it's Tyler." "No shit. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I wanted to say something." I didn't say anything. He took that as permission to continue. "I fucked up. I know that doesn't even scratch the surface, but I did. What I did to Vanessa, to you, it's inexcusable. I don't have a defense. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't tricked. I wasn't anything except selfish." I stayed silent. He kept going. Madison and I. Look, I'm not in love with her. I don't even know why it started. She said things that made me feel like she got me. But it was a fantasy. It was stupid. And now I've ruined everything." "You didn't ruin everything," I finally said. "You just ruined the things that mattered." That shut him up. I wasn't looking for an apology. I didn't want closure. But hearing his voice, hearing the pathetic weight behind it, it didn't satisfy me the way I thought it would. Maybe because he sounded too human. Maybe because I wanted him to sound worse than I ever had. "You planning on seeing her again?" I asked. "No," he said quickly. "It's over." I didn't believe him. And honestly, I didn't care. "You should probably stop calling people whose lives you've burned to the ground," I said. "It's not a great look." He went quiet. Then, "Yeah, okay." I hung up. The second I did, I felt lighter, not because anything had been resolved, but because I didn't owe him anything. Not forgiveness. Not fury. Nothing. I went to the kitchen. Made coffee, poured it black, and for the first time in weeks, I sat in my own house without shaking. A few days later, I ran into Vanessa. It wasn't planned. We bumped into each other outside the post office of all places, two people who had been hollowed out by the same storm, now waiting in line to mail off broken pieces of what used to be a life. She looked different. Not better, not worse, just changed, like someone who'd walked through fire and was still carrying the smoke in her eyes. We both froze for a second when we saw each other, then offered small, weary smiles. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied. We stepped out of the line and walked down the sidewalk together without really discussing it. Just needed the air, I guess. It was cool out, late afternoon, that golden hour where everything feels softer than it should be. "I've been meaning to reach out," she said after a moment. "You don't owe me anything. I know. I wanted to say thank you again. For telling me." I nodded. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like survival. She stopped walking, turned toward me. "It still hurts," she said, knowing they both looked me in the eye, over and over, and lied. "Yeah. I keep trying to pinpoint the moment it started. Like if I can just figure that out, maybe I'll feel less stupid." "You weren't stupid. You trusted them. There's no shame in that." She looked at me, then in a way she hadn't before. Not with pity, not even with anger, but with this shared ache, this unspoken understanding that neither of us had really put words to until now. We'd both lost someone, but we hadn't lost everything. "You want to get a drink?" she asked. "Just talk like people who've been through hell." I hesitated for a beat, then nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." We went to a small bar tucked away on a quiet street. One of those dimly lit places with creaky wooden floors and music low enough that you could actually hear yourself think. We sat in a booth near the back, the kind of spot we used to sit in with Madison and Tyler not that long ago. Funny how something as simple as a booth can feel haunted. The bartender took our order. I got whiskey neat. Vanessa asked for red wine. We didn't toast. Didn't feel right. At first, the conversation was surface level. Work, how her parents were holding up, my upcoming move out of the house. But slowly, the words got heavier. "I still don't understand how she did it," Vanessa said, swirling her glass absent-mindedly. "How she helped me pick a venue, gave me advice on vows, asked about my color scheme while sleeping with him. Who does that?" I didn't have an answer, but I understood the feeling. That mix of disbelief and nausea that lives in your throat all day long. I said, when someone starts lying that big, they have to keep doubling down just to survive the weight of it. You become a character in their script. The real version of you gets lost somewhere behind the mask they need to keep wearing. Vanessa shook her head. "I keep replaying all the times I hugged her, cried with her, confided in her about him. I told her about our sex life, for God's sake. I watched Tyler fix the gutters on my roof while I handed him a beer and asked how the engagement was going. That made her laugh. A real, sharp laugh. Jesus, we were so played." "Yeah." Then there was silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that settles between people who don't need to explain how bad it got, because they lived it in stereo. "You know the worst part?" she said after a moment. "I miss her." I looked at her. "Yeah, I get that." And I did. Because even when someone stabs you in the back, it's not the knife you miss. It's the hand that used to hold yours. We stayed at that bar for nearly 2 hours. Didn't drink much. Just talked. The way two people talk when they're the only ones who understand the gravity of what just happened to them. There was no flirting, no rekindling. It wasn't that kind of night. It was survival. When we finally stepped out into the cool night air, Vanessa hugged herself against the breeze. "This still doesn't feel real," she said. I nodded. "I know. Do you think they ever loved us?" I paused. "I think they loved what we gave them, the version of life we built for them. But I don't think you cheat on someone you truly love, not like that. Not that calculated." She nodded slowly, biting the inside of her cheek like she was chewing on the truth. "I want to hate them," she said, "but I just feel hollow." Yeah, there wasn't anything to fix, nothing to clean up. We were standing in the crater, not trying to rebuild, just learning how to breathe again. "I don't think I've cried since I found out," she said, almost surprised. "You will. So will you." I offered her a soft smile. Probably not at the same time. That got another laugh. Smaller this time, but real. She hugged me before we parted ways. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even necessarily comforting. It was just necessary. Two broken people sharing warmth in the absence of everything that had made them feel safe. When I got home, the house felt less haunted. Not healed, not normal, but less like it was holding its breath. I looked around at the boxes I'd started packing. The framed photo on the shelf of Madison and me now turned face down. The bedroom where I no longer slept. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was going to fall apart. I just felt tired. Tired and ready. The next day, Vanessa texted me. "You free tonight?" "Yeah. What's up?" I had a thought. One I probably shouldn't have, but I want to talk to you about it. We met at her place this time. A modest apartment she'd subleased on short notice. It still smelled like cardboard and new beginnings. She had 2 mugs of coffee waiting, and a look on her face I hadn't seen before. "I can't stop thinking about it," she said. "How they humiliated us. How they got to play their little fantasy while we were made fools of." I nodded. "Yeah. Well, I want to take something back," she said, sitting down across from me. "Not out of spite. Not to hurt them. Just to remind them that we're not broken. That they don't get to win." I leaned forward, curious. "What are you thinking?" She smiled, small, calculated, and honestly kind of terrifying. "Tyler's company? They're doing a big client gala next month. His boss is going to be there. Investors. It's this formal event they've been planning all year. Guess who's still on the guest list as his +1? She pulled out her phone, showed me an email. Her RSVP. Still active. "I never told them we broke up," she said. "They assume everything's fine." "And Madison?" I asked. "She's helping plan it," Vanessa said, her grin tightening. "Which means she'll be there too. Probably clinging to him like they haven't destroyed 2 people's lives." I could already feel it forming. The spark of something cold, bold, and deeply satisfying. "You want to go together?" I said. "Exactly. Let's show up. Not as a couple. Not even as a united front. Just 2 people they never expected to see again. Composed, unbothered, and absolutely in control." And then, she shrugged. "Then we tell their story. Loudly. With receipts. To everyone that matters in their shiny little professional world." I blinked. "You want to out them at a work function?" "No," she said with a wicked smile. "I want them to out themselves. All we have to do is show up, talk to the right people, and let the tension do the rest." I sat back, stunned. It was insane. It was also brilliant. And for the first time since everything blew up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Excitement. We spent the next 2 weeks planning every detail like it was a covert operation. Vanessa was meticulous. She gathered screenshots, arranged timelines, even printed out a discreet folder labeled vendor inquiries, just in case anyone needed to accidentally stumble across the proof. I handled logistics, attire, entry, parking, who we'd speak to and who we'd avoid. We weren't going there to cause a scene. We were going to tilt the scene just enough to make Madison and Tyler crumble in front of the very people whose opinions mattered most to them. "This is about the truth," Vanessa said one night while we sat over drinks. Maps of the venue pulled up on her laptop. "We're not the villains in this story. We're just pulling the curtain back." I nodded, and letting them trip on their own lies. We practiced what we'd say, who we'd casually chat with. The boss, his wife, a few senior partners I'd found on LinkedIn. We weren't going to accuse. We were going to imply, suggest, ask simple questions like, "Oh, you know Tyler and Madison? Such a tight-knit couple these days, especially after how everything started." Or, "It's amazing how quickly things move when you start a relationship while planning a wedding to someone else." It wouldn't take much. People love drama, especially at professional functions dressed up as networking events. The trick was subtlety and timing. We agreed not to arrive together. Vanessa would go in first, wearing a stunning black dress that made her look every bit like the woman Tyler lost. I'd follow 20 minutes later, solo, polite, all charm and confidence. We'd make small circles, just enough overlap for people to connect the dots on their own. And Madison? She'd be helping coordinate the night. She'd see both of us there, uninvited, unbothered, unforgiving. Vanessa looked at me across her dining table that night and said, "They stole the narrative. This is how we take it back." And damn it, for once, we were ready. The night of the gala arrived with a kind of electric charge in the air. I hadn't worn a suit in months, and as I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I felt something unfamiliar, poise. Not confidence exactly, but purpose. I wasn't showing up for closure or confrontation. I was showing up to reclaim my name. I parked a block away from the hotel ballroom, as planned. Vanessa had already texted me an hour earlier. Inside. He hasn't seen me yet. Madison's in black with gold heels. Of course. I smirked. When I entered the venue, the place was buzzing. Champagne glasses clinking, low laughter echoing through marble columns. String quartet, playing some nameless classic in the corner. It was a scene made for surface-level glamour, a crowd built on handshakes and polite envy. I scanned the room. Tyler was near the bar, holding court with a few colleagues. He hadn't seen me yet. But Madison? She saw me the moment I stepped in. Her expression crumbled, just for a second, eyebrows raised, eyes wide. Then she recovered, lifting her champagne flute with the kind of fake smile only someone who's panicking could wear. I gave her nothing, just a nod. Then I moved past her like she was any other stranger in the crowd. I found Vanessa near the sponsor display. She looked breathtaking, composed, distant, powerful. She didn't even turn when I approached. I think Madison just had a small stroke, I muttered. Vanessa sipped her wine. Good. Maybe next time she'll chew her food before swallowing lies. We split again. Circulated. Planted seeds. Vanessa struck up a conversation with Tyler's boss's wife, casually mentioning how quickly Madison and Tyler had moved on, how brave they were to fall in love while carrying the weight of a shattered engagement and a marriage. I spoke with a senior VP who had seen Tyler's name on my guest pass. Funny, he said. Didn't realize you two knew each other. Oh, we go way back, I replied. He used to help me fix things around the house when I was married to Madison. Real stand-up guy. It didn't take long. Whispers started. A few confused glances. One woman even pulled Madison aside, clearly asking a pointed question. Madison's face stiffened. Tyler noticed. His smile faltered. By the end of the hour, the room's mood had shifted, just slightly. Unease threading its way between the clinks of cutlery and staged laughter. Vanessa and I passed each other one more time, near the dessert table. She didn't say anything, just raised her glass with the smallest, most satisfied smirk I'd ever seen. We didn't need to stay long. The fuse was lit. The rest would burn on its own. We left separately as planned. No dramatics. No confrontation. Just two people who'd stopped being the story and made sure the truth finally was. By the time I got home, my phone had already started lighting up. First, a message from an old mutual friend. Did something happen at the gala tonight? Madison left crying. Tyler looked like he got hit by a truck. Then another, half an hour later. Word going around that Tyler cheated on Vanessa with Madison while she was still married to you. WTF? I sat on my couch, phone buzzing in my hand, and just let it happen. Vanessa texted me an hour later. They didn't last the night. What happened? I asked. Someone finally confronted them directly, Tyler's boss. Apparently his wife told him everything I said. Asked them if the timeline was true. Tyler stammered. Madison tried to smooth it over, but he threw her under the bus in front of everyone. Said it was mostly her idea. She lost it. Full meltdown. I stared at her message, the corner of my mouth curling upward. They leave together? I asked. Nope. He left alone. She stayed, tried to do damage control, but it was done. A few people said they're already talking about reassigning him. Can't have a scandal around their rising star, right? For the first time in months, I leaned back on my couch, let out a deep breath, and felt the tension start to slip from my shoulders. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was truth. It was balance. It was something they thought we'd never have the strength or clarity to do. I didn't hear from Madison that night. Or Tyler. I don't think I ever will. And that's just fine with me. Vanessa came by the next day. No warning. Just a knock at the door, and that same look in her eyes she'd worn at the gala. Clear, composed, unshaken. She handed me a coffee. Thought you could use something strong. I stepped aside, let her in. We didn't say much for a while. Just sat on the back deck, sun stretching over the fence. Two people watching the dust finally settle after the storm they didn't ask for, but survived anyway. She was the first to speak. So, I heard Madison's trying to get ahead of it now. Told someone we were out to get her. That this was some elaborate scheme. I snorted. And that's supposed to make her look better? She's scrambling, Vanessa said. Tyler's boss pulled him from a major client account. He's still employed for now, but his rep's trashed. And her? Well, let's just say wedding planner gigs don't come easy when you're known as the affair girl. I sipped the coffee. It tasted better than anything had in weeks. She always thought she was smarter than everyone. I said. Same with him. Guess they thought charm could cover the rot. Vanessa looked over at me. Do you feel better? I paused. Thought about it. Not happy, I said. But, like something's finally in the right place. Like I'm not crazy. Like all the gaslighting, all the second guessing. It was them, not me. She nodded slowly. Yeah, that's it. That's what it was all about. We didn't need to celebrate. We didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. We'd watch them build a lie and live in it. And we'd set it on fire by simply telling the truth in the places they tried to hide it. And now? Now we were free. The official divorce papers arrived in the mail 2 days later. I didn't feel much when I signed them. Just a strange stillness, like finishing a long book where the ending was inevitable. I read every word, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel the weight of it. The last chapter. The final say. There were no objections from Madison's side. No last-minute negotiations. No dramatic pleas. Just quiet compliance. I think, deep down, she knew. This was the only outcome that made sense. I dropped the signed envelope into the mailbox that evening and stood there for a minute longer than necessary. The sun was dipping low. Crickets just starting their song. A soft breeze carried the scent of someone grilling down the block. It was the most peace I'd felt in months. Vanessa texted me later that night. Just saw her post a quote on Instagram. Healing isn't linear. Guess she's in her self-reflection era. I smiled. Tyler's gone too. I asked. Vanished. Probably licking his wounds somewhere with a bottle of whiskey and no job leads. There was a pause before she added. It's over. And it was. Not just the relationships. Not just the betrayal. But the part of us that had been frozen in place, stuck asking why and how and what now. We had faced it. Exposed it. Let it collapse under its own weight. There was nothing left to unravel. A few weeks passed. Life didn't snap back into place. It slowly recalibrated. Mornings were quieter. Nights didn't ache as much. There were still shadows, of course. Still songs that hit a little too hard. Still moments when a smell or phrase pulled me back to a time when I believed in something that's now gone. But I was healing. So was Vanessa. We met for coffee now and then, not out of need, but out of mutual understanding. A quiet sort of respect had grown between us. The kind that can only be born from shared wreckage and the choice to stand up, dust yourself off, and walk forward anyway. One morning, we met at the same park bench I used to sit on when everything first fell apart. She looked lighter, happier. Her smile wasn't as guarded anymore. We sat in silence for a bit. Then she said, "It's strange. I don't hate them." I nodded. Me neither. I pity them, she added. That kind of love, the kind built on lies, it doesn't last. They'll never trust each other, I said. They know exactly what the other is capable of. We didn't toast or high-five. We didn't need to. We just sat there as the sun climbed a little higher in the sky, as laughter from a nearby playground echoed past us, and we realized we weren't defined by what had been done to us anymore. We were something new now. Scarred, sure, but stronger, wiser, whole. And as we got up and walked toward the parking lot, I realized this wasn't the end of a love story. It was the beginning of something better. The freedom to live without compromise. To trust ourselves again. To rebuild, not from rubble, but from truth. And this time, no one else would write the ending but us.